Hey everybody, welcome to the stream today. It's going to be a little bit of a bonus one. We obviously, well, if you didn't see last Wednesday's stream, I had this thing come flying off the lathe, and so we didn't actually get it totally finished. So I wanted to, and I just kind of stopped the stream. A lot of times if you try and hurry and fix stuff, it turns, you make a bad problem worse. So we just ended the stream on Wednesday, but pretty much right after that, I wanted a little bit of time to make sure that I don't know, inspected this thing and knew what was going on and was sure about trying it again. But with just a little bit of thought, I decided to chuck it back up in the four-jaw chuck, you know, the four-jaw chuck on the lathe. And then I just drilled it out and glued an insert in. So, and that's the other problem is, I knew that was going to be the fix, and I couldn't have, you can't glue it in and just turn it right away. So we ended it. But I wanted to redo this and do it before I left for, we're going down to visit my in-laws down in Phoenix next week. So there's not going to be a live stream. So I thought, let me see if I can just get this thing kind of finished up, because it's almost done. I mean, I was like sanding it, and all I was doing was I took the tailstock away, and I was just going to kind of get rid of the little indentation on the end. And we didn't make it through that part. So it's almost done. I'm gonna have to probably re-true it up and everything, and then we'll sand it, finish it, and hopefully everything will go good. I'm definitely wearing a face mask today with this thing. Now, what I think happened, this blank, you know, we cast a bunch of these plastic caps, and there is a lot of bad adhesion between the resin and the plastic cap things. They were really smooth. But I kind of thought we could get through it because I was hoping it would just hold it together pretty well. The problem was, I think what was happening is there's a few caps down here, and where I tapped, because I tapped threads directly into the blank, and I think it was just flexing around these areas where the caps are, and it just, once I took the tailstock away, it just, it was done. So hopefully the glued in insert will hold, and we won't have any of that flexion and have this thing come flying off again. But I think we'll get through it on this time. And I kind of gave, it was a little bit of a lesson. This is actually the only time where I've had an issue tapping threads into a blank, but I'm trying to think now. I don't think that I've tapped threads directly into a blank that I knew had some pretty bad adhesion problems. Now, well, I didn't realize it was as bad as it is until I actually started turning it, but it's a good idea probably. You know, there's a lot of times where you can just tap threads directly into your resin blank and it's gonna be fine. And I would definitely say if it's 100% resin and it's Alumilite Clear Slow, or Alumilite Clear. Those two hold threads, and I've never had an issue with threads or it warping or doing anything like that. That stuff stays pretty rigid. Epoxies sometimes, you know, with a little bit of heat and certain formulas, they can get a little bit weak in areas. So if you're ever in doubt, just drill the 1/2-inch hole, put one of these brass inserts in, and you should be better off overall, all right? So I'm going to switch over to the lathe view. Oh, actually, real quick beforehand. So I've glued in the insert, and so now that's going to hold, you know, that's where we're going to chuck it up with the mandrel here. But I also real quick wanted to mention on Friday's Patreon stream, we made some candy cane blanks, and so I just need to get these things kind of cut up a little bit. I like to square off the ends on the table saw, and then these guys will probably go up on my website next week. So I just wanted to kind of let you guys know about that real quick, just as a side note. But let's, before we start, who was here first? So Mike was here first, nice. And Kim, people out, yeah. I'm not a big fan of doing Sunday streams necessarily, but I couldn't do it tomorrow. Tomorrow's my last day in the shop, so I gotta make sure that before we go on that trip, so I gotta make sure that I have everything done. I don't wanna be messing around sanding a blank or anything like that. So I thought if I can get my stuff done that I need to in the morning, we can do a little quick live stream here. So who else is here? We got Jim's here, Lelia, Wayne's here, how's it going? And Randy, and Jim too. Jim Spalding and Jim Myers, sweet. Awesome. All right, so let's switch over to the lathe view. Hopefully it's not. That seems pretty kind of blown out. I'm using the old camera here. Let me just turn down the light a little bit on that's above this thing. So what you see here. Let me make sure I'm on the right camera. Yeah. So what I did was I just put this thing into the jaws, got everything kind of set up, and then just use a drill you know, to drill out the bottom of this thing. So I did most of the plowing out with just a 1/2-inch twist bit, and then I finished off with a Forstner bit, because that's going to leave you a nice flat bottom. So there's my, just in case somebody doesn't exactly know what I'm talking about with these drill bits. So I just used a normal, you know, your standard run-of-the-mill twist bit, but then I finished off with a Forstner bit. It's going to give you that nice flat bottom instead of the kind of angled one. Although I got to be honest, here's one thing that I noticed with this. It might not be a bad idea to actually go with the twist bit. I think I usually do that, and what I found was I gooped up the epoxy in here, and I don't know if you can see that orange kind of cylindrical thing. I actually added a little bit of the Divine Tiger Orange, Divine Pigment, into my epoxy. And so that's actually another thing. I hope that I didn't add too much. It can kind of weaken your glue sometimes. But I just used 5-minute epoxy to glue that guy in. But in the bottom there, because that's a flat hole, there's really nowhere for excess glue to go. So I might actually recommend, if you're going to be doing this kind of thing, gluing in one of these inserts, you might still just go with a twist bit, because you're going to have that little extra area where excess glue can kind of pool. And I ended up having to go in and kind of re-tap the threads a little bit, because my you know, the piece wouldn't actually fit on the mandrel. This thing wouldn't screw all the way in, so I had to come in and just kind of ream it out with a tap. So I don't know, you know, maybe if anybody else has any experience with that, any thoughts, let me know. But that was just something that I kind of found that was the first time that's ever happened, and I think it's also kind of the first time I might have just used a Forstner bit rather than just the normal twist bit. Always learn something. All right, so again, this is the universal mandrel from Stainless Bottle Stoppers, and they have this bushing system where the bushing matches up to the diameter of the kit, and they have different bushings, kind of like pen kits, you know, with pen bushings. And that gives you an idea of where you need to turn it down to if you're going for that. You could also just go for like kind of a flat thing without worrying about trying to meet it up perfectly. I usually do that though for some reason. All right, so that thing's on there. Let's see, how's this thing spinning? I'm going to spin it slow because it's a little bit off, a little wobbly. So I'm going to have to true it up a little bit, but I think it'll be okay. I was pretty much 100% sure that it wasn't gonna be exactly running true. So let's go and true it up again. I need to get my, you know what I'm gonna do? I wanna just, this may be dangerous. This may be over sooner than later. What I wanna do is kind of take that down a little bit before we even begin. Just so that the tailstock, the live center isn't trying to go into that same hole, because I don't think it's going to be the exact same alignment down there. So I'm just going to try and take that off a little bit. Get my face mask out. And oh, I got to get my iPhone too, so I can kind of see the chat a little bit. See what you guys are up to. My channel here real quick. So how's everybody doing this weekend? Usually I don't see you guys on the weekend. My channel. There it is. Volume's down. Okay. Ah, Steve's here too. And Frank. How's it going, guys? All right, so I'm just going to put my phone up there. I need to swap out the face mask in this thing. I can't barely see out of it. That helps. All right, so let's just try and a little bit low there. All right, just so that this thing comes up. Just hopefully, I also kind of dished it out a little bit, so hopefully the point won't even dig in too much, so I don't have a lot of cleanup to do at the end. That would be even better. Okay. And it's definitely a little bit wobbly. I'm going to turn on the dust collector. I think I figured out a relatively quiet way of doing this thing. A little bit quieter than it's been on some of the past streams. I don't think you guys can necessarily hear it that much, but it's loud in my ears sometimes. There we go. Okay. All right, so I think that's pretty trued up now. See what you guys are saying. Hey, Doug's here. What's up, man? Jennifer's here too. How's it going? Dave Porter? A Sunday Live. I know. It's halftime. Yeah, I was thinking I might be competing with some football today. Depending. Yak's here too. What's up, man? And Kim and Connie. Man, everybody's joining the fun. Wasn't sure. Springing it on you guys, keeping you on your toes. So again, if you're just joining the fun, I went ahead and just glued in the insert, one of them brass inserts, and all I did is I just took a 4-jaw chuck, flipped this thing around, drilled it out, everything went fine, and then and glued in. And it's funny because I was talking about not using paint, or not like adding dye or whatever, and people complaining about seeing the threads. But I actually wanted to try, this is something I've never done, was try Divine pigments with the 5-minute epoxy, and it turned out really good. It's a nice even coat, and it literally looks like I painted the inside of it, and it's covering up the threads pretty well, and the brass thing. So got everything going. We're just truing this back up, and then we'll try and finish it off today. We should be able to hopefully get through it. It seemed like it was turning fine. We had the tailstock away to kind of fix the end there to get everything going again. We'll have to see though. I'm definitely wearing a face mask today though. And for anyone that didn't see Wednesday's stream, this thing came flying off the lathe at the end. And I think the reason... Let me stop this, stand back a little bit. I feel like I'm yelling into my mask. I think the reason that we had issues was the adhesion problems with these things. We got a big cap right here, and there's just like no adhesion going on, and I think the whole thing was flexing, and that's why it stripped the threads out. So in normal cases, you don't have to worry. You can tap directly into resin, but if you got instability in there, you know, then that can kind of cause issues. So I think I would recommend, you know, in most cases, if it's just resin, if you're just turning a resin blank, you could, if you want, forego those, you know, your, oh, dang, we got a chunk. Hopefully that wasn't too bad. Oh, yeah, see, I'm gonna have to take that out now. Jeez, these plastic caps are not an awesome idea for casting. Although I am interested, if you didn't hear, I think I told the patrons, so we got a chunk taken out right there. I'm gonna have to take that off now. But I told the patrons that Dan saw the live stream on Wednesday over at Stainless Bottle Stoppers. He's the one that sent these things in, and he's gonna try tumbling some, putting them into a tumbler and seeing if we can scuff up the surface and if that makes it any better. So we'll do a little bit more experimenting with these things. Alright, so I think most of this thing is trued up now. Just make sure that I got a tiny bit to fix on that right there. Just a tiny tad bit more. All right, I think we're good now. Okay, so I believe we're back in business. I do need to get in here with the detail tool real quick, right on the end there. But I think everything else is nice and trued up at this point. Let me get the detailer out real quick and finish that up. Okay. Fortunately, we got to do all the sanding again. You know, everybody's favorite. Bailey's here too. What's up, Eric? Nice. Eric was asking about putting a metal insert. All I did is just drill it out and glue it in. Drill a 1/2 inch hole, use some 5-minute epoxy, and you're good to go. Unless I'm missing, hopefully you were talking about that. Sweet. Okay, so I think I caught up with everybody. You've been fortunate with my flying options. Yeah, I know. I actually haven't lost too many. I mean, most of the stuff, I don't do a lot of bigger stuff. You know, the majority of the things that I've turned in my lifetime are like pens and stuff, so usually they don't come off anyway, but, or even, you know, worst case scenario, which I haven't even had that many, but pens can, you know, you can like blow them up kind of, but whatever. Little bit of shrapnel never hurt anybody, right? I'm gonna see, that really felt like it was, I did a pretty good, it feels pretty smooth, so I'm gonna actually try and see if we can start at 240 grit today. Just see how it goes. If it seems like it's taking forever, then I'm just gonna drop it back down to 180. If you just kind of hit it real quick, you can see all the tool marks that you left pretty easily. Yeah, I'm just gonna go back up to 180 real quick. I didn't do that good. But before we do, I'm gonna try and kind of clean this end up. This thing, because it's flat. A lot of times I can get it pretty smooth just using the CR2 R2. Still gonna go with 180, but hopefully we'll be starting at a smoother surface on that flat part. Obviously that thing doesn't do anything for curved parts. Oh, I think I was going in reverse. I still think I cleaned it up pretty good though. You guys didn't see that. See what the chat's up to. Lost my phone there for a sec. How many pieces of sandpaper will I lose? Probably a couple. We'll see. That's why I buy it in rolls. That's fine though. I don't like keeping sandpaper around. I swap to a new one quite often. This Abernet stuff will last forever on wood or something like that, but I just kind of find that after a while with resins, even if they're not like super clogged, they just kind of lose. I don't know. A new piece is going to go a lot faster, let's say. And this stuff is pretty indestructible. Adam's here. How's it going? All right, let's see where we're at here. All right, I think we're good to go. Let's switch up to the 240. First, I'm gonna wipe this guy down a little bit with some denatured alcohol. Screw the insert into the piece. I think we might be talking about two different types of inserts. I think I might know what you're talking about. That's not what I'm using though. Because there would be no way to screw this in. This is just like a knurled nut. So you just drill a 1/2 inch hole and glue it in. Much easier. Some of those other little insert things that you got to screw in, those things, they never come out like perpendicular. And Stainless Bottle Stoppers sells those inserts. If anybody needs any of them, I think they send them with their kits usually. I'm not 100% certain on that though, because they usually just send me stuff. I don't usually buy from them. We're always testing things, and they always send. I have so many little bottle stoppers. They send like little extra goodies. I'm one of their like kind of new product tester people, so they always send me, you know, new products to test out before they launch them. But you know, they always send a couple extra stoppers and things. Alright, I think that's looking pretty good. Yeah, I think we're good. So we can skip up to 400 now. Wipe this guy off again. Nice. Well, we're glad you could join the fun, Mark. I always miss the Saturday cartoons because I am not up that early on Saturdays. So, reruns for me. I'm the rerun watcher. All right, so on to 400 grit. I'm just gonna get a new piece out. And I showed last time you can, you know, stop it and go, you know, basically sand the opposite direction, and that'll help you to identify when you've sanded, you know, gotten all of the previous grit scratches out. It can kind of be helpful. I'm not going to mess with it today. If it isn't perfect, I'll be okay with it. Problem with this piece is all of the little, there's so much adhesion issues, so there's a bunch of like shiny spots, so this thing's not what I would consider a perfect look anyway. Even if I had all the scratches and it was super polished up, it's still not going to look amazing. So we'll just do as good as we can here. I do plan to try, so just to reiterate, Dan over at Stainless Bottle Stoppers saw what happened on last Wednesday, and he was like, well, I got a ton more of those cap things if you want to try again, and he offered to try and tumble them. They have tumblers at their shop, so we're going to try tumbled smooth plastic, and hopefully that'll just give it, I don't know what media, or you know, I don't know anything about what they actually have, but hopefully it'll give it a little bit of bite, maybe make it so that, you know, casting these things, we don't have such a problem with it. And one other thing to mention, depending on what type of plastic it is, that can also cause issues, because if it's made out of HDPE, you know, really you're never going to get an awesome glue bond no matter what you do. Well, I'm glad you could join the fun. Glad we found a good time for you. For the live stream. And I know it's kind of hard sometimes to watch the replays. They're pretty long. More fun to be at a live stream live. All right, I think that's good enough. We're going to skip over to the polishing papers now. Just looking and making sure that there aren't, we're trying to see if there's any 240 grit scratches in here. Basically, once we get past the 400 grit, we're pretty golden. We're going to switch to the polishing papers, those Zonas. Those things do really well. We only have a couple of those grits, so you know, you kind of, once you get up to a certain level, you should be pretty good. Scratches and all that stuff, so I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of hand here, and then we'll move on. What I'm trying to do is put all the scratches in one direction, so that if there's a scratch going the opposite direction, or diagonally basically, I should know after we wipe this off with denatured alcohol. And I can kind of just touch up, you know, any spots like that. All right, so we're gonna call that good. Yeah, I agree. Life's like the Saturday morning cartoons. I watch the replays of it, but you know, it's just not the same. I will definitely agree. All right, guys, I got to go get a cup full of water here real quick. I'm gonna get a new cup. And I can turn off the... One good thing about wet sanding the whole way through is you don't have to worry about dust. So I kind of try to go through until we get to the polishing papers dry, just so I don't have to stop and then dry it off and wait and do all this stuff. But I think there's a lot of advantages. You're going to be better off wet sanding most of the way through. I probably wouldn't recommend wet sanding the first, your first grit. Just make sure all of those tool marks are out. Then, you can skip over and just do wet sanding the whole way through. It's a pretty good system. But to kind of really see what's going on, you're going to have to stop and like dry it off. So just be aware. It's a little slower doing it that way, but I think in general you're going to get more consistently good results wet sanding the whole way through on resin. All right, so I'm going to get a new piece of paper out. I'm going to start. So this is that stuff made by, oh shoot, do I not have any? I got to cut a new piece. Oh man. Shoot. Shop's a mess right now. Okay, so I buy this stuff. They're just 8.5 by 11 sheets, and I'm just going to cut. I usually use one of those cutting mat things, but cutting mat is buried. I'm just going to cut out a piece. Scissors work too well. That ought to be good. And this, as far as I can tell, I tried to do a calculation. This is around maybe like 700 grit or something like that. 750, somewhere in that ballpark. I like watching dog videos too. Dogs videos? Oh, Doug's videos, maybe. I was like, yeah, dog videos are fun. And the cats. Don't leave the cats out. Hey, what's up, Scott? Glad you could join the fun today. Technically, I should probably try to get the end there before I do all this polishing on the outside, but I have a good feeling. I think that we're going to make it through today. So we'll get the outside polished up pretty well, and then just kind of clean up that end there, like we were going to do last time when it flew off. Now you could just put a finish on this as well. I kind of want to see what this looks like polished, kind of, because there is going to be some of that plastic exposed. I just want to kind of see, you know, typically I would recommend putting a finish on something like this, just to make sure that the like sheen of it is going to be, you know, even all the way across. What can happen is you may, you know, the epoxy may look shinier, glossier than the little plastic caps, possibly. More of a problem when you're dealing with like wood, something like that, you know, or pine cones or something. It's you know, no matter what you do, you're not going to polish wood to a high gloss. It's just not going to look as glossy. So definitely, if you want to make sure everything's an even sheen, then just put a finish on top and it'll look great. I think, I don't know, this might look okay though, polished up. We'll have to see. I'm curious, Doug, have you looked into the Starlink internet thing? I don't think it's like blazing fast speeds, and I don't know what the upload, you know, what the uplink speeds are, but I think it's relatively decent if you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere and have like kind of low internet speeds or spotty internet. I'm going to give this a good once over with the 750 here, the green one. Try and make sure that we've gotten all the, I guess I didn't actually inspect it for scratches after I did all that. But I'm going to try and give this a good once over with the 750 just to try and make sure that we've gotten, if you can get it up to 750 to this grit, and there are no other scratches lower than that, or like a deep 750, like you don't want to put a lot of pressure, you're not pushing hard. Let the sandpaper do the work, but if you can get it up to 750, then you can buff out the rest and make it perfect, you know, get a good glossy finish on it. I recommend, I go up to the gray. So if you can get it to the 750, that's kind of the crucial step. If you've gotten everything else out below that, then the gray one will just take it up a little higher. Doesn't have to take that long with that. And then buffing wheels. You can maybe use some of the polished things. I don't know. I think for something larger than pens, like I really like the what is it called? Magic Juice. I really like that for pens, but I'm not particularly inclined to use that on something this big. I don't know. I guess I could try. See how it goes, but kind of used to buffing things out. Larger, but yeah, definitely for pens, I think that's my go-to at this point. Nice. Yeah, the colors are pretty cool in this thing. Unfortunately, we got some adhesion issues and stuff going on, but I think this thing's gonna look kind of cool in the end. We get it done. All right, so just a couple more seconds here. The green, then we'll go with the gray, and then we'll pull the tailstock and see what's going on. Clean up that end, and should be good to go at that point, as long as this thing doesn't fly off. Now, I want to mention one thing that I just noticed not too long. I don't know if you guys caught this, but the piece was actually loose on my mandrel, and I'm wondering if you know, sometimes you got to kind of adjust things and tighten things up. So you know, always make sure, you know, double check that everything's tight. You know, after what I would recommend, because vibrations can kind of happen, especially when you're truing things up. Just double check and make sure everything's nice and tight, that you've screwed that thing on real well. And because what could have happened, so then I was reversing it. I had it on reverse, and that might have unscrewed it a little bit. And if my tailstock wasn't tight, that might have actually been what caused the issue last time, is that it wasn't actually screwed on tight enough. And then you know, took the tailstock away, and it was just kind of flying around. I'm not 100% sure, but I might actually try and go back to the footage and see if I can identify if it was loose at all. But I think in that case, if that does happen in this, you know, now I have that knurled nut thing, and I think that's going to be a lot better. You know, if you got something loose on there and you spin it up, if you just tap threads into kind of, you know, the plastic, and you got kind of weird bonds going on with the material in there, that'll definitely be a recipe for it coming apart, or, you know, coming off, or whatever. Stripping threads, however you want to call it. So I'm going to wipe that off a little bit and just kind of look at this. That's looking pretty cool. The little shiny spots actually are kind of interesting, I guess. I mean, they're not the worst. It's just the tough thing for me is I know exactly what that is, and it just makes me mad. You know, I don't want to see bad bonds going on in my blank. But, you know, anyway. All right, so here we go. Let's do a little bit of gray. This one, I think they give you a micron level, but it's really tough to kind of compare grits with sandpaper in microns, and there's couple different scales of grit. But I think that this is around 1100, 1150, somewhere between 1000 and 2000 grit is the gray. And you can get these things at Zona. All these. You can find packs of the same, because I just buy bigger packs of the same grit. So a bunch of those 8.5 by 11 sheets of green, like a whole pack of it. You can find that stuff on Amazon, like a pack of the same grit. But you know, most people don't necessarily need all that, especially if you're doing smaller stuff like pens. You can cut little squares, and I mean, it's going to last a while. I just decided I'm going to buy in bulk because I like this stuff. So you can buy the bigger packs of the same grit, but Turner's Warehouse has packs of like every grit. Mix, maybe 1 or 2 of those 8.5 by 11 sheets. I'm trying to think. So otherwise, I get those other things on Amazon. Bigger packs. I don't know where else you can get them offhand. Those are the only 2 places I bought them. Oh, nice. Yeah. I think you know, Starlink, from what I understand, I don't know much about it really, but from what I understand, it's just going to keep getting better. Kind of like in its infant stage right now, but it seems like you're going to get like at least, you know, like a 4G network, cellular. You know, at least download. I don't know about the upload speeds though. That's really what if you're trying to broadcast, you have to have pretty good internet, you know, to not have to broadcast a decent, you know, quality stream. We had to upgrade ours quite a bit. Things looking pretty good. It's nice and glossy. I can tell just kind of looking at it. So we'll stop it right off a little bit after a second here. Kind of inspect it. All right, so that's looking kind of cool, and it's got, oh yeah, we added a little bit of the micro starlight glitter. I forgot. Looking good. Too shabby, not. All right, so I'm gonna make sure this is nice and tight. We're gonna take the tailstock away if I can get it loose. All of our water goodies out of the way. Put my face mask on this time. Jeez. I'm going to move the camera to the other side because that's where I want to be standing. Let me move my trash can so that we can do this right. Okay. Here we go. Now again, this is the stage where the thing flew off the lathe on Wednesday, if you didn't see it. So, and I went back and looked at the footage. You can't really see a whole lot, but it starts kind of wobbling around, and it's there 1 second and it's gone the next. And luckily I was standing, you know, it flew off this way, and I was standing, you know, over here. Typically that's kind of the danger zone. And I knew that it started wobbling, and you know, my instinct was to go and shut it off. But had I moved over here to grab my stop button, I would have walked right into the line of fire and gotten tagged with this thing, which this would hurt a lot, you know. So I should be good. I mean, I think it's fairly unlikely. You know, I'm not a, you know, master turner and understand all this stuff, but I don't really think that there's a high likelihood that it's going to come off this way, you know. So this is where I'm going to be, this is where I would stand anyway, but I don't really think that I have a whole lot to worry about. But I am wearing a face mask just in case. I think it's you know, it's solid today. There's no play with the threads or anything like that, so I think we're good. I think we're good. I'm actually going to pull out the #1 hollower just because it's a little bit smaller radius. And I actually think that the cutter that's on there is probably a little bit newer as well, sharper. I keep smacking my face with this light. Okay. All right. Kind of like that little indent. I don't know. What do you guys think? Kind of just slightly dished in. Let me touch it up just a little bit more here. Ooh, I like that. That's good. All right, so we made it, guys. Woo! No flying blanks this time. The way I like it. Oh, Alex is here. What's up, man? Sweet. Okay, so not missing anything. So we'll do a little bit of sanding on this guy. I think I'm gonna try 240 grit again. Just see. I'm gonna turn the dust collector back on for a little bit here. I don't really think I need a face mask for sanding at low speeds. I think I'm gonna be okay. Plus, it doesn't really appear like it's solid on there. I'm gonna call it good. Well, it's fairly solid. So I started with 240 grit there. We'll move up to 400. I'm going to wipe it off with a little denatured alcohol just to make sure there's no little grit particles. Okay. And then denatured alcohol again. And then we're back to the wet sanding steps. Where did the... I lost my ShamWow. ShamWow. There we go. Okay. See what's going on in the chat here real quick. Hey, Chris is here. How's it going? Yeah, I'm fixing a boo-boo. Okay, and our final grit, and then we'll do a little bit of buffing. All right, good. We're good to go. Now, like I said, I could maybe try the magic juice, but I got to be honest, with my track record with this thing flying off the lathe, I think I'm just going to take it off sooner rather than later and just buff it. I got a 100% chance it ain't going to fly off the lathe if I buff it, so let's just get through this one. We'll try the magic juice on something else. So I'm going to bring the camera up here, get kind of a closer view from the front. But this thing's looking pretty sweet. It turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it, even though it tried to kill me. Focus. There we go. Yeah, not too bad. And it's, you know, it's dull right now, so it's going to look nice and shiny and glossy and see-through. So let's take it off. You guys have a bit of a view. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Oh, opposite. Slide over here a little bit more. Oh. Kind of funky, but you can see all the little shiny spots there. That's where resin's not really adhered to, which is pretty much all over these things. No adhesion going on. So not the best bond, but we made it through. So let me go get my buffing machine ready, also known as the Comet. All right, anything else? Let's see here. What do I need to do? That there. Plug this guy in. So what I have on there is the Beal buffing, the 3-on buffing system. But I took one off. I don't use the wax wheel. I don't really find that it adds a whole lot of anything. So I just use the Tripoli, Tripoly, and white diamond. So I think I'm going to try, I've never tried it from here. I'm just going to leave the camera sitting like this. See what you guys think of that. So Tripoli and white diamond. And again, I've tried to kind of figure out what like grit level these things are. I don't know what grit white diamond is, but that's kind of the final. You can go a little higher. It's not the highest grit of a buffing rouge that you can get. A lot of people will use like a plastic polish or a car polish as the final step. Typically, the white diamond does good enough. You can get a little bit glossier with a polish, but Tripoli, as far as I can tell, it's slightly different than like sandpaper. Wow, this wheel's gross. I'm going to need to actually clean that wheel off because it's just disgusting. I'm not going to get good results. It's not exactly the same as like sandpaper grit, but I think it's about equivalent to around 900. That was the best information that I could find, basically, about it. So I've gone from 1150 was that gray paper, and then we're going to drop back down to 900. But this kind of illustrates you don't really need to go any higher than, 1100, 1200, something like that, because if you're going to do the buffing, then you're going backwards, basically. And, going from 1200, it's not exactly equivalent. It's not the exact same thing, but it's kind of similar to going, with the grit levels. One thing that's a little different about buffing wheels is they don't cut the same. They almost put like a U-shape groove into the material, whereas sandpaper puts like a V. They're little sharp particles, so it's slightly different, but sort of not. So I'm going to clean this wheel off. I got a piece of 80 grit sandpaper on here. A little bit better. I'm going to actually do it again. If you notice that your wheel is just gunked up and like crusty, then you definitely want to do a little bit of maintenance on it. And so like I said, I just grab a piece of 80 grit sandpaper. And mount it onto a piece of wood So I'll show you. I got some, man, there's something in my eye. I'm wearing safety glasses and I managed to get something in my eye. That is awesome. Let me get behind the camera so I can see what's happening here. So, just got a piece of wood, piece of plywood. This is sticky backed hook and loop, you know, Velcro stuff. And then I just stick a piece of Abernet 80 grit on there, and we're good to go. You can clean out the junk in your wheel. See all that nastiness that I pulled out? I could probably do that again, but I think we're okay. Should work all right. All right, so now I need to charge this back up. Do it a little bit more. All right, now we're ready. And another thing I'm going to do is replace the battery in my light so I can actually see what's happening over here. Might kind of blow you guys out a little bit, but I like to do it two different ways because the scratch patterns that I put in on the lathe were going radially when I stopped. So good to do kind of two different directions. Same idea as when I was talking about for sanding. Just kind of help you get rid of, you know, any scratch marks that you have in there. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Now we'll move over to white diamond. You definitely don't want to load up the white diamond wheel too much. You don't need a lot of that buffing rouge. Woo! That's glossy. All right, I think we're good. I'm gonna turn off the air dust collector thing. And bring this here, get us under that light. You can get a good glimpse of this thing. Woo! Oh, it's shaking. There we go. Man, turned out pretty cool. And so again, if you didn't hear before, a lot of times I like seeing the threads, but this time I actually tried using some of the Divine pigment. So I added that to the 5-minute epoxy and glued that in, and so it really hid that knob, the knurled thing. You can kind of see it a little bit, maybe. Well, you can kind of see some knurling, but it's orange, and so it just doesn't stick out so much. It kind of looks just like the rest of that stuff in there, so not too bad. All right, so to finish it off, we'll add our hardware. So this is the liquor size, like liquor bottle, whiskey, stuff like that. This guy's a big daddy. Here we go. Not too bad. It turned out pretty good. Can't complain. What do you guys think? I'm pretty excited about this thing. after it nearly killed me, turned out pretty good. All right, let's see here. I'm going to scroll up and see what's happening in the chat, see if I missed anything. No fun when your project tries to kill you. I know. I don't like that too much. Yeah, well, I don't do it very often to clean that thing, but when it gets nasty, you want to clean it off. You want to, because you're also going to take off some of the wheel. But I can't, for the life of me, figure out why. I mean, aside from it, deteriorating your wheel, I don't really think that. I don't know how it's going to harm anything necessarily. Let's see here. All right, so I got through stuff. Nice. Yeah, someone said, Russell said there's no sound. It probably was because I just wasn't talking. Unless you got your volume down, that could be it. Yeah, I prevailed. It didn't kill me. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I guess. Something like that. But you can definitely see. It's really interesting. I mean, there's just so much, like all of those caps, like the whole thing. I was thinking it would just be the outside that where you would have some adhesion issues, but I mean, the whole thing is basically, I guess the whole thing's gloss, like kind of smooth. And so, there's shiny spots like on all parts of this thing. On all these little caps. The only area where there isn't, I'm not seeing, like obvious areas where the resin didn't really want to stick to it is like on the inside where the caps are. That's the only place that I see that. Now, I don't think this is HDPE. I don't know. I think it's more of like PET plastic. And it doesn't have any, wait a minute. Oh, there's a patent number, but it doesn't have any. See if I can let me go look under one of my lights over here. I don't see any, like, how like they have like the recycling codes and stuff. I don't see any codes anywhere on this, so that doesn't necessarily mean it's not HDPE, but I don't know. I don't think it is really. I think it's a different one. So I think if we could get this scuffed up, I think it would work. So for anybody that didn't hear already, so Dan over at Stainless Bottle Stoppers saw this thing fly off my lathe on Wednesday. and he was like, well, I have more of these caps. And he's like, we can throw them in the tumbler at our shop and see if, we can kind of scuff up the surface. Now, I don't know what kind of media they have. One thing that I want to try, I'm not sure what like size particles, so we may be able to get the outsides, but there's obviously issues even on the inside. So I don't know, maybe if you had something like, I don't know enough about tumblers. I've never really used them, but if you had media that was like sand, like if you literally stuck sand in a tumbler type thing, that could work. Maybe you could just stick these things in a bag of sand and shake them up. That's something I would be willing to try. One thing I want to try real quick here is a lot of times acetone will kind of, I don't know, will have an effect on certain plastics. I just want to see what happens if you wipe this with acetone. Not much, it just cleans it off, looks like. Many plastics will dissolve. Now HDPE will not. This still might be a polyethylene. I guess that's what PET, polyethylene. I don't know. We'll have to look into this stuff. Acetone doesn't affect it at all, though, really. Some things can get kind of like just these kind of cups, like your Dixie's, type cups. So this is PET. This is definitely PET, and if you hit it with acetone, it dulls it. It wants to dissolve it. And if you put acetone in one of these cups, See that? So, you know, if you're using PET, you could just hit it with a little bit of acetone and it'll effectively kind of sort of scuff it up a little bit. Let's try it again. A little bit more. Not really doing it in the middle. That's kind of weird. But it'll kind of scuff it up a little bit. So there are ways to scuff things up that are easier, but we're going to give the these cap things a shot and see if, you know, their tumbling media will make them a little bit better for casting. And it's not just for these, you know, like that's real great. I don't really necessarily need to make a bunch of baby cap plastic things. Like, you know, it's fun that we figured out that these things can possibly work, but if the tumbler thing works on these, then you could use that for any material that's kind of smooth. So that would be kind of a huge deal, especially if there's, you know, cheap options for these. Like my dad has a tumbler, but it's like this huge machine. So, you know, you need something that's going to be big enough to put some stuff in, but also not like super expensive. And I don't know much about the media. So, it'll be kind of interesting to kind of learn a little bit more about this stuff, because if you know, if you're going to be trying to cast things that are very smooth, even like, you know, aluminum kind of stuff, like a smooth piece of aluminum is not going to, you know, really stick to resin, or resin's not going to stick to it very well. Anything that's smooth. So if we can tumble it, scratch it up a little bit, then you get something to where that resin can kind of bite into. We'll see how it goes. So I'm pretty excited about that thing though. So I appreciate you guys joining the fun, watching the triumph of not getting smacked in the face this time. I didn't last time either, but not having that thing come off and nearly kill me. We got through it this time. So I guess the big lesson here is, if you got material where, you know, I mean, you can make the argument for, if you're doing well, almost maybe any blank, I guess. I was going to say resin, but wood can strip out, you know, if you just tap threads into it, certain woods. This may be a really good, you know, it may be good evidence basically for always using those little inserts. So just in case people don't know, anybody didn't see it before, I tapped threads into that blank the first time and it came flying off my lathe. But the next time I drilled out that hole. It's a 1/2-inch hole that you drill, and then you just glue this in with like 5-minute epoxy. Do not use CA glue to glue these things in. You don't want to do that. Use an epoxy. So 5-minute epoxy works fine. I would highly recommend waiting overnight so that the glue fully strengthens, and then you're good to go. And you got, you know, something that's shouldn't, you know, it's not going to strip out. You know, it could maybe kind of come loose, but it is knurled, right? So again, we were just talking about gluing smooth things in. 5-minute epoxy is no different than resin, casting resin. They're all the same kind of thing, and they all work with a mechanical bond. So if you got something where it can grab onto, it's not going to let go as easy. So the only other thing is, you know, the inside of the blank that you drilled out, that's not necessarily, it's a little bit on the smoother side. It's not glossy, but that bond should be pretty good when you glue those things in. And I think that I think it's going to be a minuscule chance that the thing's going to come flying off, or you're going to have problems with the threads if you're using one of those knobs. Now, one of the reasons I don't do them a lot of times, like, I mean, it almost makes no sense not to do it, you know, but I forget. And then I'm like, oh, we got to tap this right now. The beauty of just tapping threads into your blank, which I've done that a million times, and for like bottle stoppers and most things, it works fine, but you know, it could come apart. So, you know, if I've forgotten, then a lot of times I'll just tap threads into the blank that day. But that is maybe the advantage. If you don't really have time, a lot of times you can just get away with tapping threads into the blank and you're fine. So yeah, the threaded insert, I think they are kind of nicer, I guess. Yeah, Legos, sorry, I'm skipping all over the place, but they are kind of nicer. And I think that, you get a little bit of an advantage. It's smoother when you're screwing and unscrewing. Like, it's much easier. You're going to put a lot less wear over a long time on that threaded, the brass threaded thing compared to tapped threads in resin or even wood. If you're taking it apart and washing it a lot. So like, I'm thinking like pizza cutters and things where, you may be washing that a lot and you're going to want to probably just take the handle off, That's a case where I think over the long run, you're probably way better off using the threaded insert. I don't know, certain things, maybe, maybe not. But yeah, Legos is another one where, they tend to be not the best, best adhesion. Usually if you use epoxy, it's not too bad. It's better than like, and I've kind of mentioned this in the past. When you're dealing with something that's going to be a really bad bond, sometimes urethanes don't grip as much. Epoxy is glue. I mean, obviously I just use 5-minute epoxy to glue that thing in. So epoxy is a glue product in general. And there are urethane glues and stuff, but I think that epoxy has slightly better grippiness, gluiness. And I've also seen that, epoxies tend to stick to molds and stuff a lot worse than urethanes. So I don't know, if you got a situation where it's going to be a smooth surface, I would pick epoxy probably just to see if it'll help a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, somebody mentioned something about like bullet polisher, something. I don't know. I didn't know what it was, but it was actually on the other live stream replay in the comments. So it'll be kind of interesting to kind of look into these different things. Yeah, I've gotten Legos to work fine without tumbling them or doing anything. I have actually scuffed them up, and you do get a better bond, but I'm not, again, I'm not interested in scuffing a bunch of Legos up. And you can even 3D print Legos, and that works a lot better because if you're using one of the like where it, just squeezes out, like extrudes plastic out. Usually it's not perfect. Like, you're going to see kind of layers, and so that gives it a little bit of something to grab onto. So those things work really well. But brand new Legos can kind of be, they're very shiny and smooth. So I don't know. I think, even with Legos, you could just shove those in a bag of sand or something, sharp, and just shake it up, and you probably are going to get a lot better adhesion than if you just, bought a brand new pack of Legos. Yeah, the acetone thing, you could do that too. Anyway, guys, I hope you had a good time watching the show today. We had a little bit of a bonus. Again, I wanted to get this done today. Part of the reason I did it Sunday today is because I'm not going to be doing a stream on Wednesday. We're going to be out of town. So I wanted to get this thing done. I wanted to get some redemption, basically, and share that with you guys and get it done before we left town. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching the thing finish up without any problems, and hopefully it'll give you guys some ideas. Hopefully you learned a couple things maybe, or I don't know, saw something that sparked an idea. Those are always my two hopes. Hopefully you might learn something, or it gives you an idea, whatever I'm doing. So hopefully that was the case this time. Again, Wednesday, we're not going to have a live stream, so we'll be back on, I want to say it's the 15th. Let me look real quick on my calendar. Yeah, so the 15th, so not the 8th. We're not going to have a stream, and then on the 15th, we'll be back in action doing some casting. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do yet, but I will have a plan soon. So anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, great rest of the weekend. Hopefully Monday's not too, you don't have too much on your plate at work if you're doing that, or whatever else you're doing. So I guess until next time, I'll see you guys on the 15th. And so I hope you guys get in the shop, do a little bit of casting, and have a little bit of fun with resin. So I'll see you guys all on the next stream.